I cheated on my husband. And for the first time in 40 years, I felt alive. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 64 years old, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina, in one of those beautiful historic homes that tourists photograph from the sidewalk. For decades, I was the perfect wife, the woman who smiled at dinner parties, who kept a pristine home, who never caused a scene. I wore pearls and pretended not to notice the lipstick stains, the late nights, the lies that came as easily to my husband as breathing. Richard cheated on me for years. Everyone knew. I knew. But I stayed silent because that's what women like me were supposed to do. We swallowed our pain, raised our children, and kept our families intact. Until one night, something inside me shattered. This is the story of how I stopped being Richard's wife and became myself again. It's about a man named Ethan, a love I never expected, and a choice that changed everything. Some will judge me, but I've spent a lifetime being judged for staying, so let them judge me for leaving, even if only in my heart. Richard stumbled through the front door at 2 a.m, reeking of whiskey and perfume that wasn't mine. He'd been on another one of his business trips to Atlanta, the same excuse he'd used for 20 years. But this time, he didn't even bother with the usual apologies or the pathetic lies. He just looked at me with those bloodshot eyes and said, "Don't start, Margaret. Don't start." As if I were the problem, as if I were the one who'd spent 4 decades making a mockery of our marriage vows. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply watched him stumble up the stair to the guest room where he'd been sleeping for the past 3 years, and something cold and final settled in my chest. The next morning, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Really looked, and I barely recognized the woman staring back. When did I become so small? When did I learn to disappear inside my own life? That's when I decided I was done disappearing. I started with small things. I went back to the salon I'd been avoiding because Richard always complained about the cost. I bought clothes that made me feel beautiful instead of appropriate. I joined a morning walking group at Waterfront Park and remembered what it felt like to laugh with people who didn't know me as Richard's wife. For the first time in years, I felt the sun on my face and actually enjoyed it. My friend Linda noticed the change immediately. "Margaret Collins," she said over coffee one Thursday. "You're glowing. What's gotten into you?" "I'm just tired of being invisible," I told her. And it was true. I was tired of being the woman who stayed quiet, who made excuses, who pretended everything was fine when our marriage had been dead for years. Richard barely noticed. He was too busy with his properties, his meetings, and whatever woman was warming his bed that week. Our home had become nothing more than a beautiful shell, a Charleston showpiece with perfectly maintained gardens and a rotting foundation. Then, my car broke down. It was a minor issue, something with the engine light that kept flashing. I pulled into a small mechanic shop in the historic district, a place I'd driven past 100 times but never noticed. The sign above the door read, "Ethan's Auto Repair" in faded letters. I expected the usual condescending attitude I got from mechanics, that patronizing tone men use when they think women don't understand cars. But when Ethan walked out from under a hood, wiping his hands on a rag, and giving me the most genuine smile I'd seen in years, something shifted. He was younger than me, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes and grease under his fingernails. Real, honest, present. He said, "Let's take a look," simply. No judgment, no pretense. He fixed my car in 20 minutes and refused to overcharge me. But more than that, he talked to me like I mattered, like my opinion was worth hearing, like I was visible. I drove away that day thinking about his smile. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop. I told myself it was because my car was making a strange noise. That was the lie I rehearsed in my head as I drove across town, my heart beating faster than it should have. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I wanted to see him again. I wanted to feel that spark of being seen, of being treated like a woman instead of a fixture in someone else's life. Ethan remembered me. "Mrs. Collins, right?" he said, that same warm smile lighting up his face. "What brings you back?" "Margaret," I corrected him, and I don't know why that felt so important. "Please, call me Margaret." We talked while he checked under the hood. Nothing serious, just a loose belt. But our conversation went far beyond cars. He told me about growing up in Charleston, about taking over the shop from his father, about his love for restoring old motorcycles. I told him about the historic preservation committee I'd chaired years ago, before Richard decided my volunteer work was embarrassing for a man of his status. "That's incredible," Ethan said, looking at me with genuine interest. "Why'd you stop?" No one had asked me that question in years. No one had cared enough to wonder what I'd given up. "I guess I forgot it mattered," I said quietly. "It matters," he replied, holding my gaze just a moment longer than necessary. "You matter." Those two words cracked something open inside me. When was the last time Richard had made me feel like I mattered? When was the last time anyone had? I started finding reasons to go back. A weird sound, a dashboard light, an oil change that probably could have waited another month. Each time, Ethan and I talked a little longer. He started making coffee when he saw my car pull up. I started wearing the perfume I'd kept hidden in my drawer, the one Richard said was too much. Linda caught on during one of our weekly lunches. "You're different," she said, studying me over her reading glasses. "There is someone, isn't there?" I tried to deny it, but the blush spreading across my cheeks betrayed me. We were sitting at our usual spot overlooking the harbor, and suddenly I needed to tell someone. I needed to say it out loud to make it real. "His name is Ethan," I whispered, feeling like a teenager confessing her first crush. "He's younger. He's a mechanic, and he makes me feel like I'm not invisible." Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She didn't judge. She'd watched my marriage crumble for years, watched Richard humiliate me at dinner parties with his barely concealed affairs. "Oh, honey," she said softly, "what are you going to do?" "I don't know, but I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that my life is enough when I'm dying inside." The next time I went to the shop, Ethan asked me to dinner. I said yes. That night, I crossed a line I never thought I'd cross. I put on a dress that Richard had never seen, drove to a restaurant in a neighborhood where no one would recognize me, and sat across from a man who wasn't my husband, a man who looked at me like I was beautiful, like I was worth his time, like I existed. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his divorce 2 years earlier, about learning to trust again. I told him about my children, now grown and living their own lives, about the grandchildren Richard barely had time to see, about the dreams I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten they existed. It wasn't planned. We'd been sitting there talking, neither of us wanting the night to end, and suddenly the space between us felt electric. When he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, I froze. Not because I was afraid, but because I had forgotten what it felt like to be touched with tenderness. Richard hadn't touched me like that in over a decade. Hadn't touched me at all, unless it was perfunctory, obligatory, cold. "Is this okay?" Ethan whispered, his face inches from mine. I should have said no. I should have pulled away, gone home to my beautiful prison, and continued the charade. But instead, I leaned in and kissed him. And for the first time in 40 years, I felt something other than duty. I felt desire. I felt wanted. I felt alive. The affair began quietly, carefully. We met during the day when Richard was at work, pretending to the world that I was running errands or having lunch with friends. Ethan's small apartment above the garage became my sanctuary, a place where I could shed the weight of Margaret Collins, society wife, and just be Margaret, just be me. He never pressured me about Richard, never asked me to leave. Somehow, he understood that this was complicated, that I was navigating 40 years of history, of obligation, of fear. In his arms, I wasn't making a choice between two men. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. But the guilt came anyway, creeping in during quiet moments. Not guilt for betraying Richard. How could I betray someone who'd betrayed me 100 times over? The guilt was stranger, deeper. It was the guilt of realizing how much of my life I'd wasted, how many years I'd given to a man who didn't value them, how much of myself I'd erased to keep peace in a home that had never been peaceful. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked one afternoon, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder as we lay in his bed. "How different my life could have been," I said honestly, "if I'd had the courage to leave years ago." He was quiet for a moment. "You have it now." But did I? Leaving Richard meant losing everything I'd built. The house, the social standing, the security. It meant admitting to my children that their parents' marriage had been a lie. It meant starting over at 64, an age when most women were settling into retirement and grandchildren, not walking away from 40 decades of history. "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "Then don't," Ethan said simply. "I'm not asking you to blow up your life, Margaret. I'm just asking you to let yourself be happy, even if it's only here, only with me, only in these stolen moments." And that's what we became. Stolen moments, secret phone calls, afternoons that felt like lifetimes, a love that existed in the margins of my carefully constructed life. Richard never suspected. Why would he? In his mind, I was still the dutiful wife, the woman who'd learned her place. He came home each night, poured himself a bourbon, and sat in his study reviewing property deals. We barely spoke. We barely existed in the same space anymore. But I was different now, and Linda saw it. "You're glowing," she said during one of our walks. "This thing with Ethan, it's serious, isn't it?" "It's dangerous," I corrected her. "But yes, it's serious." "Does he know about Richard's affairs?" "Some of it," I admitted, "but I haven't told him everything. I haven't told him that I'm staying because I'm terrified of losing everything I've known." Linda stopped walking and turned to face me. "Margaret, honey, you've already lost it. You lost it years ago when Richard decided his vows didn't matter. The only question now is whether you're going to keep pretending or whether you're going to choose yourself." Choose myself? Those words echoed in my head for days. I was at Ethan's apartment, curled up on his worn leather couch, when my phone rang. It was my daughter, Emily. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her words, but eventually I pieced it together. Her husband had cheated on her. She'd found the messages, the hotel receipts, the lies. Her world was collapsing, and she needed her mother. I rushed home, my heart breaking for her, and spent the next 3 hours holding my daughter while she sobbed into my shoulder. She kept asking me the same question over and over. "How did you do it, Mom? How did you stay with Dad all these years? How did you make it work?" And there it was, the cruel irony of my life laid bare. My daughter thought my marriage was something to aspire to. She thought I had answers, wisdom, some secret to making love last. She had no idea that I'd survived by becoming hollow, by accepting crumbs, by turning myself into a ghost in my own home. I couldn't tell her the truth, not then, not when she was so broken. So I held her and whispered the lies I'd told myself for decades. Sometimes love requires sacrifice. Sometimes you have to fight for your family. But later that night, after Emily had fallen asleep in her old bedroom, I stood in my kitchen and realized something devastating. I'd taught my daughter to stay. I'd modeled surrender instead of strength. She was repeating my mistakes because I'd shown her that was what good women did. They endured, they forgave, and they disappeared. I called Ethan at midnight, something I'd never done before. The risk didn't matter anymore. "I can't do this anymore," I said when he answered, my voice shaking. "Not like this, not in the shadows." "What are you saying?" he asked carefully. "I'm saying I've spent 40 years teaching my daughter that her worth comes from staying, from sacrificing herself for a man who doesn't value her. I'm saying that if I don't change now, she never will either. I'm saying that I have to choose myself, Ethan, even if it costs me everything." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What does that mean for us? And that's when I realized the hardest truth of all. Choosing myself didn't necessarily mean choosing him either. It meant finally being honest with Richard, with my children, with myself. It meant stopping the pretending, the hiding, the careful performance of a marriage that had died years ago. "I don't know," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. "I need to figure out who I am without Richard first. I need to learn how to stand on my own before I can stand with anyone else." He understood, he said softly, and I could hear the pain in his voice. "But Margaret, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're not too old. You're not too late. You're just finally awake." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my pristine kitchen. The kitchen where I'd prepared 40 years of meals, packed 40 years of lunches, hosted 40 years of dinner parties. And I made a decision. The next morning, I would tell Richard I wanted a separation. Not because of Ethan, not because of revenge, but because I deserved more than a life half-lived. I deserved to matter. I deserved to be seen. I deserved to stop shrinking myself to fit into someone else's story. The conversation with Richard happened over breakfast, in the formal dining room where we'd barely spoken in years. I was surprisingly calm as I laid out my decision. I wasn't asking for permission. I wasn't seeking his approval. I was simply stating a fact. I was done. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "After all these years, now you want to throw away our marriage?" he said incredulously. "You threw it away," I replied quietly. "I'm just finally admitting it." He was angry, yes. Angry that I was disrupting his comfortable life. Angry that the woman who'd been silent for 40 years had finally found her voice. But he didn't fight for me. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't even ask why. Instead, he called his lawyer, and within weeks, we'd begun the cold, mechanical process of dismantling a marriage that had been dead long before I'd ever walked into Ethan's garage. My children struggled to understand. Emily was devastated, convinced that her own marriage's failure had somehow caused mine. My son, David, was angry, accusing me of abandoning the family, of being selfish. They didn't know about their father's affairs. I'd protected them from that truth for so long that they thought I was the one breaking us apart. Eventually, I told them, not to hurt Richard, but because I needed them to understand that staying silent hadn't protected anyone. It had only taught them that love meant suffering in silence. The conversation was brutal, painful, necessary. Emily cried. David stopped speaking to his father for 3 months, but slowly, carefully, we began to heal. Not as a perfect family, but as honest people, learning to accept complicated truths. As for Ethan, we still see each other, but it's different now, lighter. He was never meant to be my salvation, just a reminder that I was still capable of feeling, of wanting, of living. We both knew from the beginning that what we had existed in a specific moment, a specific need, and maybe that's okay. Maybe not every love story has to end in forever. Maybe some people come into our lives just to show us we're still alive. I live alone now, in a small condo near the waterfront. It's nothing like the grand historic home I shared with Richard, but it's mine. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every choice, it's all mine. Some mornings I wake up and feel terrified by the freedom. Other mornings I wake up and feel grateful that I finally chose myself before it was too late. Linda still meets me for coffee every Thursday. Any regrets? She asked me recently, her eyes searching my face. I thought about it carefully, about the marriage I'd lost, the years I'd wasted, the price I'd paid for my silence. I thought about Ethan and the risk I had taken, about my children and the pain I had caused them by finally telling the truth. I thought about standing in my own kitchen at 64 years old, finally learning who I was without someone else defining me. Maybe I was wrong, I said finally, looking out at the harbor where sailboats drifted in the afternoon sun. Maybe I made mistakes. Maybe I hurt people I love. I paused, feeling the weight and the lightness of the truth settling in my chest. But for the first time in my life, I made those mistakes for myself. I chose me. And if that's wrong, then I'd rather be wrong on my own terms than right on someone else's. Linda smiled and raised her coffee cup. To being wrong, she said. To being free, I corrected. And finally, after 64 years, I meant it. And now, I want to speak directly to you on the other side of the screen who listened to this story until the very end. What did you think of Margaret's choice? Was she right to finally choose herself after 40 years of silence? Or should she have stayed, continued to endure, continued to disappear? Here's the truth. This story is real. The names have been changed, the locations altered to protect the privacy of those involved, but Margaret's pain, her awakening, her courage, all of it happened. She's a real woman who made a real choice at an age when society tells us it's too late to start over. But is it ever really too late to choose yourself? If Margaret's story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, or if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your voice, please subscribe to Real Hearts After 60. This is a channel dedicated to real stories about love, loss, courage, and second chances after 60. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs it, and leave a comment telling us, would you have made the same choice Margaret did? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And it's never, never too late.